last Ukrainian. And just remember actions by Boris Johnson giving advice. And they should not forget about the lessons of history. Just let us remind them. They consider their sponsors to be just expendable material, which they are ready to easily discard once they have served their purpose. And one more, one more quotation from Keith Clarenberg material. The Forest Brothers were destroyed, and that is the fate awaiting other destructive projects by London. I would like to mention the Israeli Parliament, the Knesset, approving in preliminary reading the draft on the annexation of the West Bank territories.
While documents were introduced by opposition deputies and in accordance with the current regulations, they have 3 more readings ahead of them. The Office of the Prime Minister of Israel called this step a deliberate political provocation on the part of political opponents, and Netanyahu himself instructed the members of the ruling coalition, this is the direct quote, to suspend the promotion of the draft laws until further notice, end of quote. We hope that the matter will not come to the final approval of the draft laws, otherwise it will not be possible to avoid a new dangerous escalation of tension both in the occupied Palestinian territory and in the Middle East region as a whole, and the international peacekeeping efforts promoted with considerable difficulty and aimed at reducing confrontation will be undermined and thrown far back. We emphasize once again that a solution to the Palestinian problem can be achieved only through political and diplomatic means. We see the main task today in ensuring sustainable peace in the region and creating the necessary conditions for establishing direct negotiations between the Palestinians and the Israelis on all issues of final status. Their logical outcome is intended to be the creation of an independent, territorially integral Palestinian state coexisting in peace and harmony with Israel. Just recently, the General Assembly of the United Nations voted on the so-called anti-Cuba policy of the United States against Cuba. We welcome the almost unanimous adoption by the 80th session of the UN General Assembly on October 29th of this year of the annually submitted by Havana resolution, necessity of ending the economic, commercial, and financial embargo imposed by the United States of America against Cuba. 165 states voted for it, 7 voted against, and 12 abstained. Russia, in its traditional vein, actively supported this document and made a corresponding statement during its consideration. The adoption of this resolution once again demonstrated the decisive condemnation by practically the entire world community of Washington's unilateral restrictive measures against Havana, which grossly violate the fundamental principles and norms of international law and prevent Cuba's full participation in international and regional cooperation, and also encroach on the inalienable right of Cuban citizens to a dignified life. The American blockade of the Island of Freedom is a long-standing sanctions war unleashed by the United States against Cuba to achieve its main goal, the overthrow of the government it dislikes, and is a vivid example of treacherous interference in the internal affairs of an independent state. It is no secret to anyone that these illegal unilateral restrictive measures are designed, among other things, to intimidate other states that would like to develop mutually beneficial cooperation with Cuba. The economy of the island is suffering colossal losses from the American embargo from March 2024 to February 2025. The damage caused to it by the blockade increased by 49% compared to the previous similar period and amounted to more than $7.5 billion, exceeding the huge damage caused to the country in 2023 by $2.5 billion. The total losses for the entire history of the embargo have reached more than $170 billion. If not for the blockade, Cuba's GDP could have grown in 2024-2025 by 9.2%, which is one of the highest growth rates in the Western Hemisphere. All this affects the well-being of Cuban citizens, representing a major barrier to the full realization of human rights in Cuba, primarily in the areas of healthcare, education, energy, and food security. We are confident that the fraternal Cuban people, despite all of Washington's efforts, will continue to courageously and cohesively resist the challenge. In connection with the actions of the U.S. aimed at tightening economic pressure on Havana, we reaffirm our position in favor of the immediate exclusion of Cuba from the odious American list of state sponsors of terrorism. This country has an impeccable reputation as an active participant in international cooperation in countering terrorism. Guided by the fundamental principles of the United Nations Charter, we will continue to advocate together with the world majority for the complete and unconditional lifting of the embargo, as well as against the preservation of Cuba on the specified list of states. We will continue to provide support in the struggle of the leadership and the fraternal people of Cuba in the name of protecting state sovereignty and to consistently strengthen the Russian-Cuban strategic partnership in the widest range of areas in accordance with the agreements reached during the talks held in May of this year between the President of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, and the President of the Republic of Cuba. Yesterday, Pochta Russia, on October the 29th, issued the postal marks depicting the consulate generals in Istanbul, the diplomatic missions in Uruguay, and others. All these buildings which are depicted on these stamps represent the historical value, and they all are together issued with Marco since 2023. The history of the Russian embassy in Berlin dates back to early 18th century during the Second World War. This building was demolished afterwards. Another building was erected. It was solemnly opened in 1852. The embassy of Russia in Uruguay, located on the Boulevard of Spain, is a classic example of the architecture of its time, and this building is an integral part of the cultural landscape.